2016 and 2017 had to have been my favorite time in League, mostly because that was when I was fully immersed in the game in terms of climbing, the pro scene, and whatnot, but the number one reason was definitely the new champions that came out during that time. Seasons 5 through 7 were a major turning point for the roster, as that's around the time when the champion design team got more ambitious with their creations, opting for more unique and gimmicky playstyles over following a standard template based on class. This was also around the time where I think they didn't care too much about how practical or successful it would be, and just focused on making fun and interesting concepts come to life, with the results being hit or miss. A few low popularity champions like Ivor and Kled, Alawi and Doldasol, with some long-standing runners like Jhin, Camille, and Lord Edge himself, Kayn. Representing the embodiment of all terminally online people's fantasized view of themselves, ever since the day he came out year after year, rain or shine, strong or weak, Kayn has been one of the most popular junglers in the game and continues to be, having one of the most stable popularity histories of all time, and is routinely on the front page of discussion boards if he's even the slightest bit competitive. So in today's episode of Why Everyone Plays, we'll be featuring the Shadow Reaper.
I am no toy, Kayn.
You possess the hubris of a more fearsome weapon.
If you ask me, Kayn's popularity has more to do with psychology than practicality, unlike most others where the latter carries more influence than the former. For one, he was the second official Darkin champion released after Aatrox. Remember, Vars got retconned into being a Darkin a lot later, and as you can tell from Naafiri, people love the Darkin faction, myself included, so there's already a bit of initial attraction to the champion. Aside from that, much of what derives his popularity is one simple word: freedom. He's the most free champion in the most free role in the game. Now when I say free, I don't mean freelo, I mean free as in free to do whatever you want. The jungle is the most open-ended role of the 5, being the only one that not only allows you, but requires you to traverse the map and apply pressure all throughout Summoner's Rift in any way you know how. But what keeps it from giving complete latitude to every champion are 3 things. First, pathing. The jungle is constructed to have set entry and exit points within it. This is mostly to allow counterplay options for the opposing team. For instance, the blue side top jungle has 2 main ways entering the river, not counting the blast cone near the tri-brush, so provided you have vision of those 2 points, that alone singles out the majority of where you can expect the enemy jungler to appear and therefore be ready for it. Second, clearing. While not as pronounced in lower elo, high elo junglers place heavy emphasis on clear speed and go to great lengths to optimize their first clears to minimize how long it takes, since even being a few seconds faster to a gank makes all the difference between you having total dominance of the early game or having to spend the first 20 minutes playing catch-up. Despite having the liberty to go anywhere they want, junglers still have to clear camps to buy items and keep up in levels with everyone else, and so you have to decide whether to farm a camp or look for ganks. Champions with poor clear speed are consequently restricted in this regard. Finally, third, skirmishing. Junglers don't necessarily have a lane opponent in the same sense as actual laners, but that doesn't mean they don't have to be wary of adversity. Some champions may be good at navigating their way around the map for ganks, and they also might have good clears, but the value of each can be diminished by the low skirmishing power. In the event they come face to face with an enemy jungler, they might have to retreat and forfeit priority for a while, hamstringing their overall freedom to stay alive. Perennially popular junglers are those who are proficient or exceptional in all 3 areas, bonus points that they can do so without compromising on mid to late game effectiveness. But even then, it might be more due to practical merits such as being really strong at that current point in time or having the aforementioned late game carry potential. They could still be weighed down by the restrictions naturally imposed on them by the jungle. Kayn, on the other hand, is played by many because of how little he's affected by those restrictions. The biggest one is naturally pathing. When he first came out, the ability that caught everyone's attention immediately was Shadow Step. For an extended period of time, provided he's not in combat with enemy champions and he's inside a wall, he can completely ignore terrain collision, letting him navigate throughout the jungle as if there were no walls whatsoever. This changes everything about the role for him. As the jungler, your top priority is to be hidden from the enemy team as much as you can. The less they know where you are, the more successful you can pull things off. Calling back to the example with blue side top jungle, again not counting blast cone near tri-brush, most junglers have no choice but to walk through the 2 points entering the river, and those are often warded, making them easy to see coming. Alternatively, they have to exhaust their dash ability just to get over the wall, which weakens their ganking potential. Kayn can bypass that restriction entirely through Shadow Step, giving him near limitless ways to enter and exit the jungle, which makes it that much more difficult to track where he's going. More importantly, it's unpredictable to gauge how fast he can get from one area to another, since he can make a beeline straight to where he wants to go instead of following conventional paths. It also makes him one of the hardest junglers to catch when running away. Even 1.5 seconds is enough to travel over a massive wall or several if you go Shadow Assassin. That kind of movement privilege is native to only him, putting him far above even the likes of Talon and Rek'Sai in terms of traversability, and giving the player a total sense of freedom in how they want to get around. Just the base version alone would be overpowered, but when transforming into Shadow Assassin, you get a fixed 10-second cooldown, which used to be only 8 seconds, total slow immunity, and a huge movement speed buff. One cast of Shadow Step could have you go all the way from top side jungle to bottom side if you know how to move around. Not even speedy junglers like Hecarim or Warwick with Bloodhunt active can keep up with you because they have to walk around walls and whatnot while you don't. Easily the fastest tempo out of any jungler in the game, period. As the enemy team, you only have maybe a second at most to react to Kayn being nearby with that blue dot or whatever that shows, which is hardly enough time, meaning you have to act under the assumption that he can appear from anywhere at any time. Kayn also passes the second restriction quite comfortably courtesy of his main damaging combo. Reaping Slash is broken for clearing. A low mana cost, low cooldown Yasuo EQ compressed into a single ability that has incredible base damage especially against minions and monsters with a very high bonus AD ratio to boot. On top of that, Blade's Reach is a long range, modestly wide AoE slash with once again, fantastic base damage and a great bonus AD ratio. Even untransformed, Kayn's QW makes for one of the strongest 2-hit combos in the game, and their generous area coverage gives him the option to power farm if he so chooses. Combined with Shadow Step, he can go from camp to camp and clear them in mere seconds. Ordinarily, power farming junglers have rather poor ganking potential. Shyvana, Lilia, Graves, Master Yi to name a few. Even in the mid game, they don't have a fast way to get in on their target without fully committing to it. Meanwhile, Kayn has comparable clear speed, decent ganks in the early game, and ridiculously unfair ganks if he goes blue. For the third restriction, this is where some argue he's met his match. It's true that untransformed Kayn doesn't have nearly the same kind of fighting power as the likes of Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, or Rengar, especially pre-6, but I feel like over the years, they made it easier for him to handle his own. On release, definitely, base Kayn was one of the weakest champions in the game. However, through patch updates, they not only accelerated how fast you can accumulate orbs to transform, but they bumped up the base numbers on Q and W by a measurable amount too. Plus, again, unlike other exploitable junglers who can get zoned off by their limited traversability, Kayn can avoid the enemy jungler by turning on his walk through walls cheat code and moving around them. In some cases, you almost want to run into the enemy jungler, since even if it means dying once or twice in the early game, the more you fight early, the faster you obtain transformation, of which either form can immediately turn things around and kick the enemy team's ass, so it doesn't have to worry about predator junglers to the same extent as other weak early gamers. Continuing on with the theme of freedom, Kayn's entire identity is based around adaptability. Few champions can adapt their playstyle midway through a match based on the situation, and even fewer can do it to the same degree he can. His Darken and Shadow Assassin forms ultimately make use of the same abilities, but their applications completely differ. To start, depending on if he attacks more melee or ranged champions, he will have access to Darken or Shadow Assassin respectively. If you fight a lot, you can transform as early as 8 minutes, I believe. And fortunately, you're not obligated to choose the form it decides. If Red Kayn is activated but you want a Blue Kayn or vice versa, you only have to wait a couple minutes to be able to take both. Red Kayn and Blue Kayn both have their weaknesses, but they can easily be overshadowed by their strengths. Starting with Blue Kayn, this champion is horse. Balance timeline aside, players generally go for Blue Kayn over Red due to once again the sheer freedom he has. Shadow Step basically has no cooldown anymore and you get a tremendous movement speed buff while traveling through walls, plus slow immunity, so unless they nail you with hard CC, you can just run your ass out of any sticky situation provided you're near a wall. The removal of Blade Reach's cast time gives you the most brain-dead 1-2 combo in the game, and if by some cosmic alignment of luck for his victim they manage to survive, Umbral Trespass is a 750 range point-and-click untargetable dash with extreme damage. It is so free how easy it is to assassinate with this champ. I'm getting angry, like I'm actually pissed off writing this because of all the traumatic memories of Blue Kayn with 6 items at 20 minutes and a Yuumi attached to him giving him 700 AD. Fuck this guy, seriously. Oh, don't worry, that doesn't mean Red Kayn gets off blameless either. Rost is one of the stupidest tank busters to ever exist, period. Just by being alive, this smallfo gets like 30% Omnivamp straight up, and unlike Aatrox, it's a lot easier to land his abilities. In his defense, Aatrox has more battle healing than Rost, but that's to account for it taking actual skill to get off his damage. Kayn has some of the easiest and most generous AoE attacks in the game, which is why he can turbo heal a lot better than Aatrox can, but I'm getting off topic here. Point is, Kayn can decide midway through a game whether tank busting, anti-battle pressure is necessary, or if you need someone who can loop around the jungle and waste the enemy's carries quickly. Due to this, counterdrafting against him is virtually impossible. If the enemy team has a composition of tanks and fighters to deal with the possibility of Blue Kayn, he can transform to Red Kayn and turn your own durability against you. If you're building a ranged, kite-heavy team to disengage from Red Kayn, he can go Blue Kayn and abuse your lack of defense. Rost and Shadow Assassin are polar opposites in function that they cover so many bases, lending credence to how much freedom he has. Plus, empirically speaking, there's no rule saying you can't just go one form but then play like the other. Ever since Mythic items, which God bless they're finally getting rid of them, junglers ran Conqueror and Bruiser items like Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver Statics, and Death's Dance, but then intentionally went Blue Kayn, being able to one-shot squishies while also fighting his way through like a typical Bruiser. On the flip side, you have junglers who went First Strike or Dark Harvest, and went Prowlers, Ghostblade, Edge of Night, but then deliberately chose Red Kayn to shred everyone to pieces, tank or squishy.
I am unstoppable!
So even if they chose the wrong transformation, it wouldn't matter. They still want the opposite build and got the best of both worlds. The reason they get away with it is thanks to his massive, and I emphasize massive, power spike on transformation. Kayn is the high elo version of Master Yi. You know how Yi's like the biggest middle finger to everyone in Bronze, Silver, Gold, right? Kayn does that in Master, Grandmaster, and Challenger. That's why everyone accused him of being an elo inflating champ in 2022. Against hypercarry 1v9 junglers, the idea is to put them so far behind in the early game that by mid game, it doesn't matter how hard they try, they cannot make up the deficit. Should you fail at doing so, or you don't build enough of a lead, the hypercarry jungler cannot scale and snowball out of control. Thankfully, it's easy to shut them down though. Power farming junglers typically don't want to fight that much in the early game. The reward doesn't justify the risk, they'd rather take the safe approach and farm, maybe score an early gank if convenient. Predator junglers can take advantage of that by forcing them to fight, either through counter jungling, contesting objectives, or they can enjoy the leg room of a 5v4 for the first 15 minutes and gank to their heart's content. The same win condition should apply to Kayn too, right? But it kind of doesn't. If you want to safely beat Kayn, you have to put him way farther behind than just about every other jungler because of his transformation. The power spike he gets from his passive is among the biggest, and unlike Corki with Package, Mega Gnar, or Bel'Veth with their Void Coral, this transformation is permanent and always active. If he goes Rust, not only does he get an insane amount of battle healing, but his Q does % max health damage, no small amount either. With 2 items, you're staring down like 24% max health per Q. W becomes an AoE knockup, the importance of which you can infer on your own, and Dumbledore Trespass does huge % max health damage. Once again, at just 2 items, it can already do like 40% or more, plus it heals him for a portion of the target's max health on top of the battle healing from his passive. He gets so much free damage and durability amounting to thousands of gold in value by going Red Kayn. If going Blue Kayn, you essentially get free bonus magic damage. The Shadow Assassin passive lets you deal a portion of all post-mitigation damage against enemy champions as additional bonus magic damage. As of 13.17, he can do up to 45% bonus, the equivalent of taking all the damage from Q, W, ultimate, and some basic attacks, then multiplying it by 1.45, and with it being magic damage, you basically can't itemize against it since you have to build both armor and magic resist. Kayn is deceptively forgiving in this regard. Unlike other power farming hypercarry junglers who want to avoid fighting as much as possible even if it means dying once or twice, Kayn wants to fight because he knows the power spike will make up the difference. In fact, a 0-0 Kayn who hasn't transformed by 15 minutes is arguably weaker than a 1-3 Kayn who's transformed by 10. That's how big the power spike is. Mind you, you should try your best to minimize how many times you die so as not to give extra gold to the enemy team, but either transformation can compensate for the few times you do give up your life and likely more. You can't stop this power spike. In fact, by trying to shut him down early game, you might actually push him further ahead by accelerating his transformation. So ideally, the best way to stop him is to delay his transformation as long as you can. But if you do that, he gets free farm for days, or he can go for ganks. And remember, he's one of the highest tempo junglers in the game even at base, with unpredictable gank paths. There aren't that many champions in the jungle, heck, all 5 roles who can hard carry even when behind. This champion is broken, not necessarily in numbers but in concept. By trying to shut him down, you might accidentally make him stronger. By trying to counterpick him, you might accidentally counterpick yourself. It's no surprise a lot of people enjoy playing Kayn. He has so much freedom as a jungler and so many concessions built into him that the only reason he doesn't have like a 55-60% win rate is because so many players are first timing him and running it down. And the best part is that he's not a pro play champion, which means you don't have to worry about the balanced team giving him the Azir and Aphelios treatment where he's perma weak. In fact, for some inexplicable reason, they always buff him whenever he's not 50% win rate or higher. Fuck this guy, I hate him so much. I wish I could name this video why everyone hates Kayn, and in fact I might. Let me know your thoughts on Kayn in the comments down below, whether you agree or disagree with my points. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why Everyone Plays videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.